Good morning, folks, and we'll go ahead and call this school board workshop into session at this time, showing 9 o'clock. And of course, we'll go through the agenda like we normally do in the workshops, and if folks have questions or comments, please just try to get me to slow down. And Superintendent, I think you may have staff members here, so certainly let me know when you'd like to maybe call them forward.
Yes, sir.
And we can go ahead and go through every item on the agenda so that Monday night we'll kind of all be prepared. So, as usual, we'll go through each item. Of course, item 1 is opening of the meeting. Item 2 concerns changes to the agenda, and so I do have a change here in front of me, so I'll go ahead and conduct a formality and read that. It is an agenda change for the consent agenda, item 8.7, early termination of Pediatric Services of America. PSA contract was deleted at the request of the superintendent. Item 8.8, tag on bid RFP 190901, School Health Services and School Health Services Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida and Aloha Care Group was deleted at the request of the superintendent, and added item 8.21, annual agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and CenturyLink for internet services to the Okaloosa Detention Center, DJJ, location in Crestview. And this is an emergency addition due to internet outage affecting instruction to students at this site. All right, so that concludes with the changes, and we'll go ahead and move to the next item. That will be recognition of Niceville High School Eaglet Dance Team, State Champions 2019 Universal Dance Association Florida Championships, Small Varsity Jazz Division, presented by the superintendent. Section 4, visitors, we don't have any that are scheduled. Section 5, public comment, members of the public, we don't yet know. Section 6, administrative personnel appointments. 6.1 will be the appointment of the principal of Shoal River Middle School, presented by Superintendent Chambers for approval. 6.2 will be the appointment of Assistant Principal to Meigs Middle School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. All right, so we're moving on now to committee and staff reports. Section 7.1, in-county travel paid for the period of April the 4th through April 24th, 2019, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of April the 4th through April the 24th, 2019, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. Section 8 will be consent agenda. 8.1, approval of the consent agenda. 8.2, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of April 18, 2019, minutes of student disciplinary hearing of April 18, 2019, minutes of workshop meeting of April 18, 2019, minutes of regular meeting of April 22, 2019, and minutes of the special meeting of April 29, 2019, all recommended by Superintendent Chambers for approval. 8.3, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Shoal River Middle School for fencing in the amount of $732, presented by Mr. Tim Bryant and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.4, invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.5, school donations, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
Dr. White, if I could
Yes,
just
sir.
interject. Again, thank you to all of our community sponsors out there who help our schools. It's great that we have such generous businesses and individuals out there who help our schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, so 8.6 will be the renewal of the school food service management operations contract for RFP 15-01, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.7, deleted, early termination of Pediatric Services of America, PSA contract, as I previously announced. 8.8, deleted, again as I previously announced, tag on bid RFP 190901, School Health Services. 8.9, tag on bid renewal ITB 15009 EST cosmetology equipment and related supplies, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.10, tag on bid ITB 17C-65K term contract to repair, motorize, and refurbish bleachers and basketball backstops, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.11, tag on bid ITB 19-586-B-NC walk-in cooler freezer, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.12, exempted purchase over $25,000, Apple and Dell, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.13, service agreement number 19-79, Taylor Berry, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.14, service agreement number 19-81, Denise Carey, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.15, interagency public works agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the State of Florida Department of Corrections for the Inmate Work Program, presented by Dr. Bill Smith, Specialist, Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Mr. Destin.
Just a question, Chairman, just for new members and for the public. What exactly do we have these folks doing in the schools district?
All right, well, I'll certainly defer that to the Superintendent and
Absolutely.
Yes,
perhaps
sir.
your staff.
And Dr. Smith, if you come up.
Good morning, Dr. Smith, and welcome.
Morning. These individuals in the past have done specific amounts of work at our schools, but there are certain restrictions, and Mr. McInnes has been working on this agreement. It's the same agreement we've been using for many, many years. They cannot work on our sites when students are present, so whatever is done is usually done in the summertime. Most of it's non-skilled labor, cleaning up and that kind of stuff.
Painting.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to verify for everybody present that
Thank you.
we're not putting students in danger.
No.
I might just add that when I was a commissioner of Valparaiso, we instituted that in the city with similar restrictions. And as a matter of fact, when I pulled out of my house today, they were across the street weed eating. So, and they were well monitored too, I should say.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so we'll now move on to 8.16, sale and disposal of surplus property, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent. 8.17, proposed athletic event gate fees for Crestview High School for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Mr. Brian Humphrey, TSA Athletics and Discipline, and recommended by Superintendent Chambers for approval.
I just have a question.
Sure, Dr. Kelly.
And maybe this is a newbie question, but I understand the rationale last year when Fort Walton Beach High School increased their gate, and I understand that we have a timeline by which coaches can put in the application to increase their gate fee. Wouldn't it be better and more consistent if we had that same fee applicable across all of our high schools? I'm sure that every school has needs of some type related to their athletic departments.
So when you think about that statement, so I do believe looking at those prices at one time across all high schools would make sense in terms of our parents' community going from school to school, and is consistent. Right now, our board policy gives schools, individual schools, the ability to change those prices per board policy, individual. If that is something that we would like to look at and change board policy, I think that's something that we could do. Right now, it allows for it, but I do understand when community goes from school to school and it's different. I know Mr. Humphreys at times does get calls regarding that, as he's shared. So that is something that we could look at.
I just think that it would make sense and be supported by everyone if it is. I think there's a need for that because I'm certain, as I stated, every school's athletic department could benefit from $1 extra on their fees, and it makes sense. I understand why the board at the time allowed Fort Walton to, and now Crestview, but I think that all of our schools would have the same need or similar needs. whether it's their concession stand or they're upgrading their field or whatever their needs are.
And I appreciate the question or comment, and I understand exactly. I guess from my perspective, it may be that the board policy might ought to be revised, but in the case of Fort Walton Beach High School, since it's been brought up, as I understand, they went through the board prescribed policy where the principal consulted with the school advisory council and brought it to us as according to our policy.
Right, and I understand that.
And I know, but I want to clarify for the public, because there probably will be questions, as you suggested, that the fees aren't the same at every game or every school. And then the secondary part of that, for me, but it's just because maybe of the way and when I worked at schools, I like the idea of individual principals having the ability to bring forth that item as they see fit. And in this case, the Crestview principal and the school advisory council and the various procedures, they brought it forth. And but it may be that the school board would rather take over that responsibility and just prescribe it for everyone. That'll be a matter of discussion, I guess, because the point's been raised.
Or just where it comes up every year where they can, all the principals can get together and say, so there is some uniformity there.
Or a reminder that here is the
Right.
timeline by
Right.
which you should get this application in, if they're not aware.
So as we're sitting here discussing this, one point that I did not make is, so we talked to Mr. Humphreys when Crestview brought this forward. Did pose the question, what about the other high schools? One of the things Mr. Humphreys will do next year, early in the second semester, is convene all the high school principals and say, here's the timeline off the top of the head. I believe that there's an April 1 deadline, then a May 1 deadline, and then a June 1 deadline, something to that effect. But early in the second semester, he will convene all the high school principals, and where are we on gate fees? So I do appreciate that.
All right, so you've
And I hope we
already-
don't go up again.
Well, I think Mr. Humphreys mentioned that in the past, they tended to all meet and kind of agree on it. I don't know that it was a rule, but it was just kind of a
Courtesy.
courtesy that they would do and say, look, I'm thinking about asking for more, but this year, evidently, that didn't happen. And so maybe in the, just going forward, that would be a good thing. And with Mr. Humphreys on it, he may orchestrate that so they can get together and
And I think, too,
talk
we
about
had some
that.
changeover right at that point in time, so.
Yep, we had a
lot was
principal
happening.
change at one of the big high schools, so that may have been part of it, but, yeah.
Well, I
think-
talked to Mr. Day, and I can assure you the increase is not for artificial turf. I can
Oh,
tell you that,
I
okay?
No.
They have a whole plethora of other expenses,
Yes,
of cutting
yes.
grass, maintaining. So each of the schools needs the money,
Oh, that's right, yeah, so,
and, whether we try to do a board policy or do it this way, we're still approving this.
Right.
So, I'd like to see them get together and come up with a recommendation to us and see if we can't streamline it a little bit.
It sounds like your staff already has a plan, so I appreciate that.
They do going forward, yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Desson's exactly right. If this passes Monday night, the fees are going to go up at Crestview High School. Right. All right, 8.18, School Food Service 2019 Summer Feeding Program Sites and Times, presented by Mr. Stephen Anderson, Program Director, School Food Service, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.19, Inter-District Private School Services Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and the School Board of Santa Rosa County, Florida for school year 2018-2019, presented by Mrs. Amy Dell, Title I-9 Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Dr. White, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could, and I know Ms. Dale called us all and talked about this, but for the public, would it be okay if she came up? Because we have private school kind of put in there, so I just would like the general public to know exactly
Good morning,
what's
Ms. Dale. and
going
Good
on.
morning. Hello.
Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you.
Yes, under Title I, this is a new addition that the funds for each child receiving Title I services will follow the child. So for instance, in Okaloosa County, we have 6 students who reside in Santa Rosa County. but attend 3 private schools here in Okaloosa County. And so Santa Rosa will be reimbursing us for those Title I services that we provide in our private schools.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dillon. All right, so 8.20, cooperative agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the Early Learning Coalition of Emerald Coast for child care services provided to the Teen and Parenting Program, presented by Mrs. Terry Schroeder, Program Director, Student Services, and recommended by Superintendent Chambers for approval. All right. 8.21, annual agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the CenturyLink for internet services to the Okaloosa Detention Center, DJJ, location in Crestview, presented by Mr. Dustin Keith, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And board members, you'll remember this is an emergency item. Okay. Seeing no questions or comments, we'll move on. Excuse me, Mr.
I'm
Bryant,
sorry.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
So I know Mr. Mitchell called all of us yesterday, and I hope moving forward that any of our vendors that are going to offer us a service and we're paying for that service, that we get the service that we're paying for. This is really shouldn't be in the position that they're in. So, and I know Mr. Mitchell expressed his concerns too. So hopefully moving forward, this won't happen again, at least with this particular vendor. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, so moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, information item only. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, drop, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, information item as well. 9.3, correction to the substitute and temporary employee salary schedule, fiscal year 2018-2019, effective 9/2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.4, request to double fill the position of Principal, Plu Elementary School, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.5, personnel recommendations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.6, employee reinstatement, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.7, employment separations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.8, employee transfers, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.9, employee termination, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.10, employee suspension, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.11, employee suspension, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.12, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.13, leave without pay, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Section 10 is for discussion agenda. As of this time, there are no items that have been moved there, but there might be. Section 11, construction program owners representatives business. 11.1, Mr. Destin, you may have a report, sir.
Well, as you can see later in the agenda, we're working on Baker School's cafeteria. And as you're all aware, we're working on security upgrades. And other than that, nothing to report.
Wow. I know you folks have been very busy.
And have a lot of work to do yet.
I know. I appreciate that. I know the board does too. All right. So 11.2, TPM program number 6, task order number 4, pre-GMP Baker School kitchen renovation, presented by Dr. Bill Smith, Specialist Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All All right, so Section 12, Information Technology, we have an item, but we've already covered that. Section 13, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report today.
All right, thank you. Superintendent, you've got some, again, out-of-state or field trips, and you may have some other business, sir, and would you please share?
Do have a few things, and some of you might also be mentioning a couple of these. Do want to say, first of all, Fort Walton Beach High School, their junior ROTC program, they received the Distinguished Unit Award, and that is a high honor for our ROTC programs. So I have the blessing to go by Fort Walton Beach High School today at the faculty meeting. We'll be recognizing the ROTC program, so very excited about that. As you know, it's Teacher Appreciation Week as well, and I know each of us up here very much appreciate all that our teachers do, and sent a message out to our teachers. And one of the things that sometimes I think that we might forget sometimes, and not necessarily all of us, but I think the teaching profession is one of the most noblest professions that's out there. And we kind of shared that you think about it, every profession that is out there, every individual who's out there was impacted by a teacher, and teachers make the difference. So something that I'm extremely proud of. And then lastly, a lot of us had the opportunity to go to the Cox Hero Awards, and if that is something that doesn't impact you or make a difference, I mean, just your own life, when you think about some of the things that these students go through, you know, I made the comment at the award ceremony, you know, as adults sometimes we have difficulty dealing with some difficult situations. These kids, some of them as early as elementary, are dealing with them, overcoming them, and great success stories. So it was exciting to be there, and just want to also thank Cox for their support and their sponsorship of that event, and it was a wonderful time. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. All right, so moving on to Section 15, that is board members' announcements and requests for information. And so at this juncture, Mr. Destin, I'd start with you, sir, if you have anything.
Well, I'm just going to echo the superintendent's comments about teachers. All we accomplish in life is based on the teachers we've had, and so it truly is a noble profession.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Destin.
Thank you.
Mr. Bryant?
And I will also echo what Mr. Chambers has said. It's a shame we only give them a week. I think they should get the whole year. Every day should be teacher appreciation. But also, we should also thank the nurses that are in our schools. It is Nurses Appreciation Week. And Ms. Schroeder, you're out there. You're a nurse. If you would just stand so we can recognize you. And, you know, again, without school nurses out there doing their job, you know, we appreciate them. So thank you.
All right, Dr. Kelly?
Well, and I would just say, I think this is the first time in my memory that everybody on the board, including the board attorney, is affiliated with a close family member who is a teacher or who works in some capacity in the school, or we've been teachers and educators ourselves. So Teacher Appreciation Week has such a memorable effect on all of us, certainly. And I'll echo the Cox Student Hero Awards. That was really amazing to hear some of their stories, as it always is, and the teachers and parents who support those students. It was really amazing, some of the things that the educators, again, have done to uplift those students and make their lives better. I also enjoyed helping to monitor FSA testing this week. That was interesting. And had the pleasure Tuesday of walking around some of our schools with our Florida School Board Association affiliate, Tina Pinkeson, and she had never been to Okaloosa County, and she was on business in Walton County, and I said, "You've never been to Okaloosa? You need to come over and see the best." And she really was impressed. So a big shout out to those principals and teachers who allowed us to invade them for just a few minutes on Tuesday and show off a little bit to a Florida School Board affiliate. And lastly, it is also Mother's Day this weekend, so happy Mother's Day to all of the educators who are also mothers and all of those in our own lives who've touched us so greatly, the first teachers in our lives.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Vinci?
Well, yes, it's certainly want to shout out to all the teachers, and also to remind that we're still in full swing of assessments. And this is a little bit later than we've traditionally had assessments, And I know that's challenging for those teachers to keep those students motivated. I was in Leah McGill's class this week at Destin Middle School, and she does a breakfast thing called Bagels and Books, and got to join in with their little book club, and that's great. And she dressed up and really made it come alive. And that's what those teachers are doing to keep these students going, to be motivated. I know there's AP testing, all kinds of things going on. And like I said, when you're doing that in your last month of school, that's an additional challenge. So again, I want to shout out to that. So and again, the Cox thing is another one of those life-changing things when you sit through that program and see what those students have to go against. So appreciated that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avenche. Yes, and very clearly, there's so many good things going on in the Okaloosa School District. So thank you, and thank you all.
Yes.
All right, so section 16 will be public comment. Be members of the public that wish to address the school board. Again, at the end of the meeting that we added. Then section 18, of course, is adjournment, and that's all that we have on this agenda. Let me go ahead, though, and ask, as customary, if there's anything that we need to cover, Superintendent or Mr. Attorney or staff at this juncture. Anything, board members, colleagues? You're all good? Mr. Horton, please come forward, sir. See? Glad I asked.
Thank you, Dr. White. Just very briefly, it's a 30-minute present. I'm just kidding. So there's a lot of great things going on. It's also fishing season in Okaloosa County, and from an IT standpoint, it's the pH fishing. So we wanted to make sure the board was aware that we'll be sending out an email to our employees, just reminding them about safeguarding their own usernames and passwords. We have had some instances this spring where employees were tricked into providing their credentials for login, and that happened. So like the county does with their employees and the sheriff's office with their employees, we're going to be adding a banner to the top of all emails that originate from outside the district that essentially says, warning, this email originated from outside the district's network. Do not click links or attachments unless you recognize the sender or know the content is safe. So it'll be just another safeguard to make sure that we help folks kind of protect their own login information.
Good.
Okay.
Another security item. Excellent.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I think that's probably it. So at this juncture, this workshop is adjourned.